Well, our beekeeping season is only just about to start, and for a lot of you, extracting honey might seem a long way off. But it'll soon be here, and with that in mind, today I'm joined by Simon Mildren, founder and CEO of Hivekeepers and his micro honey harvester, to find out more about this interesting piece of kit and how it might change the way you extract honey. Beekeeping Short and Sweet, a beekeeping podcast for the inquisitive beekeeper with a short attention span. A beekeeper, in fact, just like me. Before we get into today's beekeeping conversation, and in the absence of anyone else supporting my podcast with an advert or two, here's my little self-promotion again. For all of you who haven't yet signed up to my Patreon page, I, together with Steph, have been creating beekeeping content for many years now. And if you're looking for some straightforward, down-to-earth tips and techniques, help and advice, then do take a look at my Patreon page. We have over 1,600 individual beekeeping posts, videos and podcasts filled with useful and timely help and advice. My approach is pragmatic and calm, sometimes entertaining, but always with help and support for beekeepers at the heart of what I do. I keep my videos short and concise wherever possible. No waffle, no flannel, just honest beekeeping advice from years of keeping bees. Take a look and join me for the new 2025 beekeeping season. It'll cost you less than a jar of honey, and you never know, there may be something there that will help you improve your beekeeping. Head over to Google and search for Patreon and the Norfolk Honey Company. Hi everyone, I hope you're all well and getting set for the start of the new season. Today I have another treat for you all. Let me explain. A couple of weeks ago I received an email detailing a new honey extraction product developed by a company called Hivekeepers. I thought it looked like it might be something that a lot of you might be interested in hearing about. Now, I'm sure many of you listening will be saying, what or who are Hivekeepers? It's a question I had myself when I saw the micro honey harvester, and I figured what better way to find out more than to have a chat with the man behind it all. Today I'm joined by Simon Mildren, founder and CEO of Hivekeepers and his micro honey harvester, to find out more about this interesting piece of kit and how it might change the way you extract honey. Hi Simon, thanks for joining me on my podcast. It's great to have you here today. Just to give everyone a little context, you're in Australia. So whereabouts in Australia are you?
Yeah, great to be here with you, Stewart. And I'm all the way down in the southeast corner here in Melbourne, Australia. So right down in the south. And right now we are at the tail end of our summer. And I know where you are, you've had a cold start, but we had a nice 30-degree day here today. Probably the last one or two of those that we'll get.
30 degrees Celsius, is that?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, looking forward to some warm summer sunshine, I must admit. So it's about 8:35 here. What's your local time?
So it's 7:35 in the evening here. So our look outside and it's still daylight for us at that hour.
Okay.
And I think it might still be over 20 degrees, but cooling down.
Great. I'm just about to get stuck into our beekeeping season here. In fact, I'm hoping this afternoon that I'll be able to get out and take a quick look at some bees. But I guess you're nearing the end of your active season?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And most beekeepers here in the southeast corner have had a real struggle this year. It's probably one of the worst seasons in quite a long time. So there's been a lot of beekeepers working hard. We're blessed, Stewart, down here in the state of Victoria to not have Varroa yet, even though it is further north of us. So we can't quite blame the conditions on Varroa having arrived here, although I probably can't say the same in another 12 months. It's just that we had a dry year and just locally a lot of people really struggled, although I think a few people are catching up now at the tail end, but most people really struggled this year.
And does that include you? How was your season?
Not great. It was where I live in an area which is not far from the coast, so we're very lucky we get some coastal influence that keeps the temperatures up. We also have flora that is really great through our winter. Obviously, it's not winter here now, but that means we come out through winter quite well. I didn't do very well, which wasn't a great thing given I'm trying my hardest this last summer with our testing for our new product, and we wanted to be able to achieve so much. I've had to work really hard with lots of other beekeepers to make sure we could get what we wanted to out of it.
How many colonies are you running, Simon?
Oh, I've got it nice and small now, Stuart. I have 3 hives here in my residential backyard.
Yep.
It used to be up to a 15 or 20 when I was doing more testing and a little bit more science, but that's not quite where we're at anymore.
Sure. And when did you get started in beekeeping?
It was about 15 years ago that I got into beekeeping. I was in a different place then, Stuart. I don't know if you've heard of the Yarra Valley. It's a beautiful wine growing region of Victoria, and that's where people might have heard of it. We lived up there and we had beautiful 10 acres with orchards and vegetable gardens and all of the beautiful things. So as I'm sure you can imagine, bees fell into that at a point in time there because it just felt like the logical next step.
Yeah. And you're enjoying, I guess the beekeeping, I suppose, is very much a hobbyist kind of level for you now, but obviously with the new product development, it's taken a bit of a turn.
Yeah, it has. And in fact, I've really been working on lots of different innovations and technology and the like, Stuart, for about 8 or 9 years. So in that time, we've done quite a few different, we've had a few different innovations and research and development that we've been working on. And maybe, just maybe, there's some people that listen to your podcast that might remember. We put out the Hivekeepers app about 8 years ago, and that was a record-keeping software for beekeepers.
Okay.
Do you know what I learnt, Stuart? Is it's really hard to keep software running and keep software going and to really support and do a good job. So all credit to those people that do that. It's really tough.
So can I just say, this presumably then isn't your full-time job?
Yeah, that's right. So for the last 18 years, I've been a professional firefighter here in Melbourne. And
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and whilst that's been an interesting, at sometimes exciting career, it's also left me with a bit of yearning to learn more. And I guess the beekeeping side of things came in there, and also the innovation side of things came into that as well, because I got to a bit of a stagnant point where I was no longer learning in my job how I used to be. So I thought I'd go, I don't know if it's logical, Stuart, but I went and started a business in beekeeping technology. That's what I did.
Yeah.
That's just what happens when you want to learn and you've got itchy feet and an active mind.
And busy people are always busy, always looking to find something else to keep them busy. So that
you know it.
Yeah. So before we dig deeper into your new invention, the latest one, can I ask, how did you get started in thinking about, because this is an extraction system, how did you start thinking about that process? Because, quite frankly, there are so many products out there for extracting honey. What made you think, we need something new?
Sure. So I might add one more bit to my earlier journey in the business side of things. After I worked out that the software was a really hard thing to do, and I ran that for about 3 years. We then were awarded some grant funding from our state government down here, and we built smart-enabled beehives, image recognition beehives, to look for Varroa at our ports around our borders. And we were doing some work there, and after doing that for about 1.5 years, 2 years, we were not successful in keeping the funding going. And I think you know the rest of the story there. For most people, probably are aware that Australia was Varroa free until just a few years ago. Yeah. But at the same time, we were working on one other technology, which was GPS trackers for beehives. For high value honey, people were stealing beehives.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's a problem for you too. Is that the case?
It has been. Touch wood. Luckily, I've not encountered that problem, but I know some people have really suffered. So it's technology that's required. Yeah.
And the reason I bring all those up, I should say that at the end, when Varroa arrived, our GPS tracking journey ended overnight, because all of a sudden there was a movement restriction on beehives across the country.
Right.
And all of a sudden the value of beehives went plummeted down because everyone was worried about getting Varroa, even though that was probably not rational, but that's what people were feeling. So, Stuart, I guess it was then that I went, wow, I've now got no sustainable pathway forward with my business. I've had a few dead ends now, and I've struggled through those. And I had one of my business advisors, business coaches say, well, there's something there to look for. You've just got to be patient and maybe see what you can find. And he goes, just make sure you're thinking about, you've spent thousands of hours talking to beekeepers in many different countries. There's something in that. You'll find something in there. And he was absolutely right, because what had been a hassle for me for a very long time had been a repetitive conversation I'd had with lots of other small-scale recreational beekeepers, Stuart. And it was all around honey harvesting. And I guess if I elaborate a little bit, I personally always found that the cappings removal, do you know what? I just don't have the skills for that. There's something wrong in how I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I've had all the tools, I've had all the bits and pieces, I've tried everything there, and I still can't do a good job of it. I normally get my wife to come in and help me, and maybe just then we'll have a bit more hope of it being done well. So I was really frustrated by that, and I was thinking, well, is there something I can do there? And then when I'd been harvesting honey the traditional way, I was thinking, well, and we also have to sit there for overnight or sometimes 24 or more hours filtering honey. That's a lengthy process. And then at that point, you've still got to clean up. And for me, Stuart, I'm not sure if this is, there's probably people out there that are better than I am, but then you've got to clean up all the mess after it for a couple of days. So when I sort of say that, they were the common problems that I had felt, but I'd also felt them coming back at me from all the conversations I'd had over the years. And I didn't start with a solution in mind. Like that's absolutely not how to do this sort of thing. I just started with what are the problems. So I went out and talked to lots of people to hear what all the problems were that they were having, and I knew I was onto something.
Okay.
I knew that there was a frustration there. I knew that there was a frustration with other technologies that had come around over the last 10 years, and that people were still looking for something else. I also had it confirmed that a lot of the small-scale beekeepers got started to enjoy the bees and to enjoy a little bit of honey.
Yeah.
And not necessarily going home twice a year with 80 kilograms of honey and a weekend's worth of work. They were wanting a little bit of honey and just the pure pleasure of looking after the bees. And for a lot of people, I don't know if your listeners would agree with this, realise that over time it sort of drifts away from that, and you do spend so much time honey harvesting and thinking about that, and that's not really where it all started.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, I talk to a lot of different beekeepers, ranging from a single beehive in the back garden to 1,000+ colonies, and invariably, it is the backyard beekeeper that really struggles with space and time.
Yeah.
And let's face it, equipment can be very expensive to buy if you want the full setup of a honey room, and then you have to store it somewhere. So I do agree. I think there's a lot of people out there that are looking for a way of not downsizing the equipment, but having something, I guess, more sustainable for their home life. And also,
yes,
so many people do get into beekeeping because they want to help the bees. They want bees at the bottom of the garden. And, I do get a lot of comments saying, well, I'm not actually in it for the honey. I just want to have a couple of beehives, and maybe we'll take a jar or two from them each season. You've definitely hit a vein of comment that people are kind of talking about. So with that in mind, the micro honey harvester, which is the name you've given your new extractor, came into being. Do you want to talk us through how that situation has developed, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty of exactly what it is? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2.5 years ago, when I was just doing that customer understanding, that customer journey piece, I realised that we needed to find a solution to answer all those problems we've just spoken about. And I started to work with an industrial design team here in Melbourne, and I laid it out to them, and we looked at all the different problems, and we looked at all the different the existing solutions,
Okay.
and we looked at all of the potential solutions. So we wanted to think, well, there's all these different ways that we can remove cappings. There's all these different ways we can get honey out. A lot of them are damaging, a lot of them are time consuming, a lot of them are costly. So we had a really thorough analysis. We looked right across, we looked up and down, we looked in every direction that we could, and we tried a lot of things
Okay.
purely to confirm our suspicions. And often our suspicions were, we don't think this is a sensible pathway, but we want to know for sure. So it was about being able to rule things out more than anything, Stuart.
Yeah.
We wanted to know what doesn't work. So we spent the first 6 months really being thorough about that. What floated to the top back then was a system which ended up being the core to what we've got now. So I'll talk to you shortly about the cassettes, the honey cassettes that we have. But every time we tried to resolve a problem or to look at the different options available, we knew we had this loose idea around a honey cassette, and it kept on coming back to that as being probably the most likely option. So we went quite wide in all of that, and then we started to come back, and then we just test lots of little things. We test as much as we can. We look for what fails. Lots of things failed. Lots of things didn't work. And that just brought us closer and closer and closer to something that could work. And then it wasn't until we did some testing about a year and a half ago, just be over a year and a half ago, where we went, wow, okay. Our concept testing, which I'll talk about shortly, was a really important step, and it worked. Well, I might as well mention it now, Stuart, but when I go to talk about the honey harvester soon, the very first version of our concept honey harvester was an electronic salad spinner. I'm sure you have salad spinners in your kitchen there at home, and I found an electronic one, and I said, this is enough to prove a point. It was about a year and a half ago we did the concept testing with our salad spinner version of our harvester. And that was really, and it sounds crazy to think that there was just an off-the-shelf from a kitchen supply shop product that we use to test our concept. But that's the smart thing to do. Test it with something simple and easy to get access to, and then improve your technology from there. So once we could prove that it actually worked, then we went through an extensive phase of testing with bees, testing with beekeepers, fixing all the problems we found, because you never get it right the first time, and continuing to improve. So we've been through about 4 or 5 different iterations of the core parts of the invention, and we still continue to do more before we take it to market very shortly. But that's just because we keep learning. We just keep learning.
Okay. So you've got to the point now where you have your micro honey harvester. Now, I've seen images of it, and I guess really what we should do is talk about the actual equipment that you need, because having looked at it, it seems as though it uses completely separate frames, cassettes to go into the hive, which then fit into the extractor.
Let me tell you all about it.
Yeah, do you want to just go through the process?
What I'll do is, I've got it in my hands, and I know your listeners won't see that, but I'll hold it up. We'll talk about it, Stuart, and that way you can advocate for those that can't see, and you can make sure I'm being really thorough there.
No,
so
absolutely.
what I'm holding up now is a standard Langstroth deep frame that's made in our new design. So it simply replaces a Langstroth frame. Take one out, put one in. Now, I know that's not always the most common size frame, but we had to start somewhere.
Sure.
So then what you see on this frame, Stuart, there's the 8 sections, 4 across and 2 down. And that's what I refer to as a cassette. So there's 8 cassette pairs here. And those cassette pairs are sitting in there really flush. There's no gaps there for small hive beetle and other nasties to sort of find a way in somewhere behind.
Okay.
But when these cassettes pop out, they pop out, and those cassettes are made up of 2 parts. And I'm holding this up to you. You're seeing 2 parts, and you can see how they come apart in the middle.
Okay, yeah. So Simon has just taken one of these square cassettes. What size would you say they are, Simon? In terms of
a Yeah, a bit over 100 mil by 100 mil.
Okay, so so we've got this square cassette, and it literally pulls apart across a central position. Okay,
That's right.
and each of those sides has the cell profile in it.
Yeah, so what I'll probably say next is when the cassette halves are together, and let's assume that the bees have put some nectar in there, has developed along nicely, and they've capped this off. So that's obviously what does happen. I can show you one of those too in a minute.
Sure.
When we then pull the cassette halves apart,
Yeah.
you can see there that the back of each cell is partially open. And when I show you that, it's 50% open. And I know it's not too clear for you when you're looking at it there, Stuart, but if everyone just imagines in their mind that the base of the cell, when the two halves are not together, there's an opening. 50% of the base of the cell is open. But when we put them back together, there's a full seal in the bottom of those cells.
Seals the bottom of the cell when they're together, and when it's separated, it exposes around 50% on either side of the frame, as it were.
It does. You've got that exactly right. So the reason we do that is, and it defeats problem number one that I have, Stuart, is if we can harvest from the inside face, not the outside face, we don't have to remove cappings.
Okay. Yeah.
So no cappings removal is required to use our system. You simply push these apart, and then we're going to harvest in a minute, and I'll be sure to show you. We'll harvest, and the honey will flow out from the center of those cassette halves, away from the cappings. And the other great thing about that, if we're not interfering with the cappings, we don't get cappings and beeswax and bits and pieces pulling through into the honey you've just harvested. So we get clean honey.
Okay.
And you might remember back, that was one of my other things, a frustration around the length of time it takes to filter. Sure. No filtering. So all of a sudden we quickly, with the design of the cassette, are overcoming some of the core problems that I talked about earlier. Now I'll hold up for you, interrupt her anytime you like, Stuart, but now I'm holding up the honey harvester. Now the honey harvester, would you say, is the size of a small coffee machine? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I guess over here in the UK, if people imagined a clear Perspex honey bucket, that's kind of the sort of size that they're looking at.
Well, it's funny you say bucket, because we were aiming for a feel which just feels like you grab it in your hands and go for a walk. Yep. And the idea behind it is you can just walk with this down to your bee yard. You can be inspecting your bees like normal. And if as you go through, you come across a frame which has some cassettes that are well and truly capped, you can harvest as you go. Okay. And the great thing there, Stuart, is you can harvest just one cassette pair at a time. So you're not feeling obliged to have to wait until you've got a full frame. You can just harvest a little small section at a time.
So, Simon, could you just hold the I'll call it an extractor, hold the extractor up. So yes. What I'm looking at is a black base, and then above the base, there's a kind of a clear bucket and a central spindle with what looks like a cassette holder where the cassettes are going to fit, and then a lid on top of that, and then a handle to hold it all together. Now, presumably,
exactly,
I can see a green light. Presumably, there's a motor in the base, is there?
There is a motor in the base, and to break it, you've explained that very well. To break it down just a little bit more, there's a handle that comes off, which allows the lid to come off.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a lid there. You are right. There's a spindle, and on the inside of the machine there is, I just call it the holder, which holds the cassette halves.
And it looks sorry, Simon, it looks as if the cassettes slot into that holder. Is that right?
You're absolutely right. And I'll just pick up one of those ones from before. Okay. So there it is there.
Yeah.
And assuming that there's on the outside there is the cappings. We point the cappings inward. And I'm not probably showing you perfectly, but I'll just start that with one hand. And it slides in. And it's in position, ready to spin. Obviously, I put the other half in there as well. And you can see through the clear wall of the container, you can actually see there the sections where the
So
honey's going
what
to come out
Simon's
from.
just done is he's split open one of the cassettes, exposing the inside, which has then exposed half of an open cell, and then clipped that into the holder in the middle of the bucket.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
it's yeah, it looks as if it's going to spin really freely.
Yeah, it does actually. I'm actually still yet to show you a harvest. I'll just show
Okay.
you one other part here. I can lift that center spindle out completely,
Okay. Yeah. So the
which is
center
great for,
spindle pulls out from the middle. Okay.
and then the base that you were talking about before,
Yeah.
I can lift the bucket off that base.
Ah, okay. So Simon's just
So that,
literally taken the central spindle out, and that's allowed the motorized base to come away from the bucket, which just leaves the bucket in his hand.
and the great thing about the bucket just being in your hand is, firstly, there's a handle on it. You can easily pour with it. So when there's
Yep.
honey there, you can easily get our spatula and pour it out and get that honey out of there nice and easily.
Yeah.
And it just means that cleaning, and you might remember back to one of my other chief complaints was cleaning. Once you've got the honey out of this, Stewart, I promise you'll have this cleaned in less than a minute. In fact, probably in 30 seconds. And that's the old just warm, a little bit of warm water. Cold water still works, but warm water works. And people say, well, is it going to be dishwasher proof? And I say, I don't even think we need to worry about that, because I wouldn't want to commit that much space to a dishwasher when it takes me 20 or 30 seconds to clean it out.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and one question while you're holding that up, Simon. So, where the central spindle fits through the bucket and into the base, there's what would you call that? A central column in the middle where the spindle fits into.
Yep.
What kind of capacity of honey can you get into that, up to the point where it's going to flow over the top and out the bottom?
What you can't see on the side is just a very light measure. There's 2 litres of capacity.
Okay. So
before it interferes with the spinning mechanism or interferes with that central column that you're talking about.
And roughly how many of the cassettes can you extract to get to that 2 litre mark?
So in terms of volume, in terms of weight, one frame can hold about 1.4 kilograms of honey.
Okay.
So in terms of volume, I need to go back and make my maths brain work for that. So I can't remember off the top of my head, but we're talking probably close to 2 litres. It's essentially going to fill this up.
Right. So one frame will fill that up to the point that it needs to be emptied.
And what we find is the bees on these frames can either just fill out to the surface of the cassette.
Yeah.
But if they're having a wonderful nectar flow, Stewart, they just keep going, and it can come out by a whole nother, you know what they do.
Absolutely.
Come out by another centimetre or more. And you can actually harvest that quite well without any real change to what goes on. It slides in nicely still into the harvester.
Right.
And you can still get that honey. In fact, you'll get a lot of honey out of that. So we're limited in that initial depth, but the bees do extend beyond the cassette boundary.
Okay.
Well, let me just show you this. I'm just going to put it back together. And instead of just showing you a pretend cassette, well, not a pretend cassette, a cassette without any honey in it, I reckon I should take you through the journey of an actual real cassette full of honey that was collected about a week ago.
While you're just setting yourself up, Simon, the motorized base looks as if it's a rechargeable base. You haven't got it connected to the mains, have you? No, it's not connected.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So we've got a lithium-ion battery in there, and that battery will last long enough to harvest more than 2 frames. Okay. And we made that quite specific. But that's just so the average backyarder could be doing an inspection, like I said earlier, and go, oh, look, there's a frame almost ready. And they could harvest that, and they could probably harvest another one without too much hassle, and feel like they've been able to collect as they go with the battery. But you can plug it in at the back here. Probably a bit awkward to see. There's a USB-C port just underneath.
Yep.
You can either leave that plugged in, or the other best way to do it is you just take a battery pack down and have a battery pack powering it.
Yeah.
If you need to keep going. So it's not complicated.
Great.
It's really not complicated.
Okay.
And It's a nice, there's a bit of weight in the base, not too much, but the great thing there is it really, if you've got it on top of the beehive nearby or on the ground or wherever, it's actually going to anchor quite well to the ground.
Cool. Okay. So sorry, I interrupted you. You were going to
No,
start a demonstration of a cassette with honey in it.
I'd love to show you, and you're just going to have to show your, or speak for your listeners. I'm
No,
just going to
absolutely.
adjust my camera ever so slightly, just down so it's not so awkward. And maybe you could just talk about what I'm doing. So here's a
Yeah. Okay.
cassette.
So Simon's got a cassette, which is this 100 mil square cassette, and it's mostly capped. It looks as if it's capped flush to the outer face of the cassette, Simon. So
Yes,
yeah, so it's
it is.
pretty much all capped over, and the two sides are joined, so there's no honey leaking out of it at all. So it's a
There's
nice
not.
self-contained honey container.
Yeah. And so what I'm going to do now, and the actual production version has a nice little lever key mechanism that pops these apart.
Okay.
So I have to pull it. I'm just pushing the two halves apart because, as I'm sure you can imagine, there's a little bit of
Yeah, sure.
wax that can develop in
Okay.
on the inside there.
Yeah, so Simon's just
Ooh,
split the
smells
cassette
amazing.
in half, and it's exposed those inner faces, which he's now putting into the cassette holder, but with the inner faces pointing outwards, so that he hasn't had to uncap at all the outer faces. It's already exposed honey where he's pulled those cassettes apart. Lid
That's right.
goes on.
So I'm going to just hold this in position on a bit of an angle, just so I don't get all the reflection off the screens
Yeah,
here.
sure.
And I'm going to push this button in a moment, and it's going to spin for 20 seconds. It turns itself off after 20 seconds, but you can see how it looks. So I'm just going to make sure I'm in a really good spot. I think that's probably not too bad.
Yeah.
All right, let's have a look.
So Simon's just pressed the button, and literally within a second or so, the motor has started up. The cassettes are spinning, and you can visibly see the honey coming out of the cassettes, out of the cells, and hitting the inner side wall of the bucket, which looks fantastic, Simon. That's great.
It looks amazing, doesn't it?
It looks
It is.
really, really cool. Yeah.
It is. Can I just say, I don't ever get bored looking at this.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
It's just slowing itself down now. So it's finished its 20 seconds and it's
Okay.
slowing down.
Yeah.
And I'll just say what I do find amazing is, and I mean, I haven't had lots of opportunities for this, but people want to watch this.
Yeah.
So you can harvest a little bit safer and a little bit easier. You can do it in your own kitchen now. You can harvest in your own kitchen in a few minutes.
Yeah.
So the Saturday night cheese board that you have out with a bit of honey, you could harvest the honey freshly in front of your guests, and they can have a moment there. If they've got kids, they'll be closest in front of everybody looking at it and watching and pointing at it. What I'm going to do is push it one more time, Stuart, just to
Yeah.
see. My guess, and I'm still guessing this, Stuart, is 80% of it comes out the first spin.
Right. Okay.
It must be dependent on the conditions, of course. We know that. But generally, it's pretty good the first spin. You can still see a bit flicking on the walls there. And I don't know how easy it will be for you to see. I'm just going to have a good look around. I'm looking for bits of beeswax or anything in there. And honestly, sometimes I normally expect a few little bits of crumbs. I'll just call them crumbs of beeswax.
Yeah.
I'll take the lid off to show you. So I'm going to take the base off so that that's out of the way. I'll take the lid off. I've taken the center spindle out, and that's so clean of honey now that if I was to hold it up like this with the face, the open face, holding it, trying to get more honey out, it won't come out. There's nothing, it's sticky, but it won't come out. And then I'm looking here. It won't look like a lot of honey. It never looks like a lot of honey because do you know what it's like when you do a honey extraction and you obviously get what's out of the bottom of the bowl and then you go around with some sort of spatula and you go, wow, we'll just keep getting more and more and more. That happens with this. Sure. So it doesn't look like there's much there, but I would have to say there's probably about 200 mil in this bowl.
Yeah, so Simon's
right now,
taken the bucket out of the extractor base, taken the spindle out, the lid off, and you can see the honey that's dripped down the side. I bet it smells great, Simon. It's
the
dripped down the side
amazing.
of the bowl. Although I'm looking at it from a distance, it looks really clean. It does look very clean honey, so no cappings, no debris at all by the looks of things.
Do you know, I'd even be prepared to say, Stuart, that's probably one of the cleanest ones I've done. Normally, I'd be able to go, oh, there's a little bit,
Yeah,
maybe there's
sure,
2 or 3 little bits. But
sure.
today, with this one that I've just done with you, I can't find anything. And do you know the 2 or 3 bits that I normally would find,
Yeah,
you or I would just eat through that. You wouldn't
sure,
even
of
think about
course.
it. Yeah, you're right. It smells amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And can I just talk about the different types of honey that you have over there for you personally, Simon? We have a range as we go through the season. We have a range of different honey types. Our summer honeys are particularly liquid, but the spring crop and the autumn crop tend to be granulated honeys and can pose a real problem. And I'm sure that
yeah,
there'll be lots of skeptics out there looking at it and listening to this saying, well, it's not going to
yeah,
work with the kind of honey that we have. How do you deal with that kind of honey?
yeah. So we know that we've got honey over here called jellybush,
Okay,
and that's so thick that it is the only way that you can remove it with traditional methods is to completely damage the honeycomb structure.
sure,
Otherwise, you don't get it out. Now, small scale beekeepers wouldn't do that full stop. They would just leave it for the bees, and that's the end of that, and the bees
right,
can consume that when they're ready. So harvesting jellybush wouldn't be something we'd be doing. We
okay,
get in our area here some tea tree, another plant that you might have heard of, tea tree oil. So
yeah,
tea tree is
yeah,
and that is also quite can crystallize along with canola, which is very familiar, probably familiar over there too. Canola
yeah.
can
The
crystallize.
canola we call oilseed rape over here, so
Oh, you do
that's
too,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
So a lot of those particular honeys do become quite thick and crystallize quite fast. In that instance, it doesn't really matter what methodology you're using. It's probably going to be hard to get that honey out of anything. So my thinking there is, I think it's the most practical thing is the bees get to have the honey that remains in there,
okay,
and it might be that you take these cassettes out and replace them when they're at a different food source. If you're moving them around or the flowers have changed in your area, you
yeah,
might put in a fresh set of cassettes and let
okay.
them put fresh nectar there. It will be a problem. We can't ignore it completely, but I just think it has sensible management around how you control your hive resources.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And, we have the same granulation issues here in the
Yes,
UK. And actually, it's about management and it's about timing as well, particularly with the oilseed rape. If you put the box, the super, the honey frames on later in the season and you
yes,
take it off and extract it at the point that it's capped, then it will extract as a liquid honey. And the thing I like about your system, I have to be honest, I was pretty skeptical when we when we
sure,
set this up,
good,
and what I can see for anybody, I guess for the people that I'm talking to specifically here are the ones that we talked about initially, where they maybe have 1 or 2 hives. A lot of the people that we're talking about live in the countryside and they have oilseed rape being sown by farmers locally to
of
them.
course,
But what they can do, and they complain to me that it's gone solid in the frame, and how can they get it out without cutting it all out and melting it down, which is the traditional method. But if you can take out a cassette as soon as it's being capped,
yes.
you do away with that granulation. You can get the oilseed rape honey out quicker than you would with a full frame. And so maybe, just maybe, they can extract oilseed rape honey and enjoy what I think is a really nice honey. So I think that might work well for them.
And it sort of fits in well with the other theory I've got because we know that there's a typical pattern that the nectar will end up in put on a frame. It'll end up being fairly central and radiating out from there.
Yeah.
You can you can even harvest the central frames that are ready and central cassettes rather that are ready and move the cassettes from the outside in.
Yeah. I see what you.
And you can
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can so you can be that selective as long as you're just careful about when if you're moving them in and out often you just got to make sure they sit in their position properly, which they pop in quite well, but
Right.
you just want to be conscious of that. I think you can. Now, again, we're talking, Stuart, we're not trying to harvest 80 kilograms of honey through our system. So some people go, oh, how would you go harvesting 10 supers of honey? Well, how would you go? You'd be using something a lot different to this,
Sure.
and keep doing that. I'm not here to change someone who's got the passion to do the bulk side of things,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm here to offer something different for those who really never were out there for huge quantities of honey and just want to do it because they love their bees and love the side serving of honey that they can get every now and again.
No, it looks fantastic. Now, the frame that you've just been holding up is a Langstroth Deep, yeah?
That's right. Yes, it is.
Yeah. So here in the UK, we have a hive type called the National, which is, I guess, the most popular system here in the UK. Although I'm doing my very best to convert people to Langstroth because that's my favourite personal hive type. I think it works really, really well. And now, you've got to walk before you can run. But do you have any plans for different hive type formulas?
Yeah, we do. So I'll be really clear because I don't want to try to fool anybody.
Yeah.
Our next move would be to be looking at a shallow Langstroth frame, so that we call them ideals here in Australia.
Okay.
We'll be looking at the ideal sort of shape, so it's like a half depth Langstroth frame. In the US, they have a similar one, which has just got a slightly different depth on it, but not really a problem when it comes to manufacturing something that suits both.
Sure.
Then when it comes to changing the width, every time we change the design, I'm up for a fortune in costs.
Yeah, I bet.
And I've got to use what you said. That was really exactly how I'm playing it, Stuart, is you got to walk before you can run. So we need to get something to market. We need to show people that we've got something meaningful. We need that feedback from those people that are early into, being involved and that are excited by being involved with something like this.
So obviously we've established that this system really is best for the backyard beekeeper who maybe is running just a small number of hives and looking to take a minimal, not a minimal amount. I can see people using that to extract more than you think because it looks such an easy system to use.
Do you know what surprised me is we put out there the idea of an introductory package. We thought we've got to start somewhere by saying, hey, here's a good place to consider starting. And we said a harvester plus 2 frames is what we consider the starter pack.
Okay.
And we were doing some testing around pricing to try to learn sort of where we might be able to fit. Obviously, all things considered, we have to make sure our business is sustainable. But we very quickly got told, Stuart, I don't want 2, I want 8, or I want 10 frames. I'd want to fill that top box. And that was actually a really strong position most people had. And I thought, wow, I didn't know that was coming. And in fact, we've changed the shape of sort of how we want to offer the product to make sure that it's easier to do that.
Okay. And while we're talking about that offer, people are going to listen to this and they're going to get straight on their computers and start searching for hive keepers and for micro honey harvesters. How do they find out more about this on the internet?
Yeah, well, maybe I'll just put a few dates and times because that sort of becomes relevant. So, Stuart, we've chosen for our first step into the market to go through Kickstarter. And for those that don't know about Kickstarter, it's a crowdfunding platform. You could sort of say it's pre-sales, but you're pledging support for a project. You're pledging support, and as a reward for putting a dollar amount down, you get the product normally at a reduced price. That's how that sort of works.
Yeah.
And that's the idea behind a crowdfunding platform, generally speaking. Now, we go to launch London time, if I can use that, Tuesday the 25th of March, so that's next week, at 9 p.m. in the evening, your time. We've got to consider a few different locations, and 9 p.m. next Tuesday the 25th is when we go live, your time over there. So that's on the crowdfunding platform. When people go there, they will be presented with different options. And the very beginner starter package is around, and I've done a very quick Google, search for exchange rates. So I've just done that hurriedly on the side. It's talking about approximately £325 for the starter package. So
Okay.
that's the harvester plus 2 frames full of cassettes and a little accessory pack and a few spare cassettes. So that's the starting point there. What might be worth saying to you, and the time will run out on this, they won't get much time by the point that they're listening to it. Prior to us launching, if people become VIPs by going to our website and signing up to our mailing list and then seeing there's a VIP option, they'll get a deal much sweeter than that.
Okay.
I can promise you that. It'll be worth it's a couple of hundred Australian dollars, but it'll be worth probably £110 better on the deal that happens then.
Okay.
So there's a VIP thing, and we ask just a small is it £5 or €5 or $5 US? I can't remember what we've set it to for your geography over there. I can't remember, but that's the VIP sign up rate,
Right.
and that gives you access to that deal. Pretty sweet deal. Now, when we go to market later in the year or early next year with a product more generally, and we'll probably use retailers to assist our pathway, the product's pricing will look a bit different.
Sure.
Also on there, there'll be early bird pricing for those that want to fill out their top super with frames, and that'll be by far the best deal that is getting around is in that first couple of days of our campaign.
Sure. So I guess the best option for anyone listening is to go to hivekeepers.com and sign up there and have a look at all the information on there. I've been on the website, Simon. It looks great. Lots of really useful information there. I would say, I came to this from a bee farmer perspective.
Yes.
And, this isn't a bee farmer product yet. You might have some plans for the future. So let's not say that it's never going to happen, but for anyone that is running maybe 1 to 5 colonies in the back garden at an apiary, you could take this along to your apiary, extract and walk away with a bucket load of honey, having not really done anything in terms of setting up equipment, having to clean and wash equipment. And
it's great, isn't it?
I'm really excited for you, Simon. I think it's a cracking looking product, and
thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing it out there in the flesh and working. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's great. And I guess I should just mention too, there's 2 things I really want to tell you about. Firstly, though, those people that I guess are listening to this after the launch date, they'd want to go straight directly across. They can go to our website, pardon me, but they'd want to go across to Kickstarter.com and look up the micro honey harvester there as well, because that's obviously the place. And we've got a much better website through Kickstarter that's going to be there in a few days from now, which is much more comprehensive than what you've seen so far, because we're finally able to share some detail. The other bit, Stuart, I want to see how this feels for you, because you sort of said, as a bigger beekeeper, it's not quite where you're at, and it's not where you're at. But I want to plant this idea in your mind, if I may. So I want you to think about, and I'm just going back to my honey harvester. I don't have it all together at the moment, but if you can imagine a version of this honey harvester, about the same size, maybe a little bit smaller, but a little bit less beekeeper focused and a little bit more kitchen appliance focused, and being something that you'd be proud of to have on your kitchen bench. I mean, to me, the quality of what we've got is good enough now for the beekeeper. But if you were someone that wasn't a beekeeper, but you wanted to harvest fresh honey in your own home without ever having the bees, that's what you can do with this. And it comes back to you then, Stuart, as someone who can provide them with cassettes full of delicious, beautiful, local or special honey to be able to provide them for them. And that's where I get the concept of, is this product on its way to become an Nespresso for honey?
Okay. Yeah. And I see exactly that. And I can imagine that there would be people out there that would absolutely love the idea of being able to take a cassette and extract their own honey, as you say, to pop on a cheese board in the evening with their
Yeah.
guests. I mean, it'd be absolutely fantastic.
I mean, who knew we needed almost every home to have a special coffee machine 25 years ago?
Absolutely.
Who knew?
I have one.
Anyway,
I have one at home. It's fantastic. Simon.
Well, I just wanted to give you that little bit of potential future vision, and I'll throw it back to you now, but that's something that really does excite me about the potential in front of us.
Fantastic. Okay, Simon, that's absolutely fantastic. Thanks so much for joining me today. If people want to get in touch, I guess social media platforms are the way forward.
We do. We've got YouTube, Instagram, Facebook is no problem. There is a team's email address that we've got, so you can get in touch with us at team@hivekeepers.com and put any questions you've got there. Chances are I'll answer that. And if someone says, hey, Simon, I want to know this, well, my guys will make sure that I get to answer that for you. So love to hear from people.
Great. And so if they search Hivekeepers, that's the phrase to use, and they can get in touch directly.
You'll definitely find us.
I really do wish you all the best with this product. I was hugely skeptical when we set up this chat, and I wondered how on earth people were gonna harvest honey using it. But I have to say I'm quite excited for you. I'd love to have a look at this in closer detail. So maybe we get some over to the UK and I can shoot a video and let people know exactly what it's like. So
that'd be amazing. Yep.
Thanks again for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope there's some value for your listeners.
Well, that's it for this week. Don't forget to check out my website, www.norfolk-honey.co.uk, and for my latest videos and podcasts with more updates, tips and techniques, it's the same Patreon page, www.patreon.com/Norfolk Honey. And remember, I'm Stewart Spinks, and that was Beekeeping Short and Sweet.